plow through it. Okay, well, good. Hello, everybody, and a nice way to start on Monday morning. We're here to just kind of circle the chairs around and touch knees and hold hands a little bit about what's going on in our communities and, pardon me, learn from one another. Maybe see if there's ways we can come alongside. And for our check-in question this morning, we'll go around the horn here, and I'll invite, Amy, I'm going to start with you. And then I'll invite folks to pass the baton as we do here in Zoom land. And what I'm going to invite folks to check in on today is to share with us what's the best thing happening with broadband and technology in your community. Amy, let's hear from you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll say maybe it's, oh, that's a big question, but I did have one of our township officials stop in the office today. We are in person here, and was really interested in using the ARP money to support better connection. They know they're probably not a fiber, immediate fiber area just because they're fairly low population, rural ag type township, but they do have some wireless capabilities and are already in the 2 hours that we're into the day, we have some opportunities. So I haven't even had a chance to talk to Carter about this on how we can maybe support what that might look like to help them navigate what they could do to help expand maybe some wireless technology. So what I'd say, just why that, why I identify that is it's just great people who normally, maybe not normally, who historically haven't been as engaged in the topic are coming forward and wanting to have these and recognizing the county as a partner to help navigate what they can do and get to solutions. So that was kind of just a fun, positive interaction this morning around expansion of that particular type of technology. Do you want me to pass to someone else? I'll go to Nancy if I'm passing the baton.
Good morning. I think the most exciting thing is we are really starting to see providers interested in providing fiber to the home. We've had a lot of discussions with RDOF and everything that changed who our providers are. We really had to pivot on all that. Instead of working with CTC, we now are working with Mid-Continent, and then out of the Chisago Lakes area, still working with CenturyLink as well. In the city of Harris, they have an RDOF area, and they're working with the city to do the whole city, even those parts that aren't in RDOF. Mid-Continent's been expanding down in Chisago Lakes and Lindstrom. And we have another meeting set up with Windstream, Katie and I. Well, it's coming. We're picking dates, and we want to see what they plan to be doing. They're covering quite a bit of the east side of the county and south, as well as a little portion of the north part. So we'd like to see how we can work with them, but it's great that they're all willing to talk to us. And I think our reaching out kind of helped, especially in the Mid-Continent area. I think they appreciated it and looked at us closer and sooner, just because we did reach out and we are organized and we have good information to share with them, our surveys and speed tests and that kind of thing. So it's really exciting to see that happening. Let's see, I'll pick Carter.
Yeah, I'd like to echo a lot of the sentiment that Amy touched on. I think it's inspiring to see people in the community, whether educators, business owners, citizens, public officials, unite and sort of rally around a common cause that is of increasingly more significance. It's lovely having these conversations externally as well as internally with people at the county, but also, when I'm out in the community at the WISSOTA 100 talking about what it is I do, and I meet people in the community that are saying, hey, that's really sweet. And that is something that that we understand is more of an issue. This is how it impacted my business in 2019, 2020. This is how it impacted my family and my lifestyle. So I think building those networks within the community to galvanize a crowd of collaborators is essential, and I'm excited to continue that progress.
And just for introduction, Carter is the lead for Minnesota fellow that started with us last month, focused on broadband. So that's for those who weren't on when that introduction was, or maybe we didn't make that introduction. Anyway, so excited to have him on with us.
Katie, do you want to go next since you're already unmuted?
Yeah, sure. So what a lot of what Nancy had to say, it's hard to say if you could kind of turn back time and see where we would be had we not become a Blandon broadband community when we did, how different the story would have gone. I feel like receiving that grant when we did put us in a position to understand and learn more about what broadband looked like before anybody had even heard of COVID. And then suddenly we were just launched into this, whirlwind of learning, trial by fire, learning through the pain of not having it or those that do have it. And throughout all that, I've always felt a little bit like there's so much more that I still don't know, but I feel like I've got a little bit of a leg up on most. And I attribute that completely to our opportunity to work with Blandon through this program. One of the things that we were able to do right away, and I've shared this with you before, is we surveyed our entire community. We had them do a speed test, and we asked them some very pointed questions about their particular internet situation. And it's those survey results that I think have put us at the table with a lot of providers, or they want access to that information because now there's all these dollars out there to spend, and it's kind of a money grab. And kind of like what Nancy said, there's suddenly that we're getting calls from providers instead of us going out and having to seek the meetings ourselves and explain who we are and why they should take the time to meet with us. Just this morning, Nancy sent me a message of a provider that's looking to speak with us because somehow through this whole process, we've been able to prove ourselves as some resident experts in our community. One other thing I will say that's a big shiny thing in the broadband world, at least in the Chisago Lakes, is actually this group. I feel so fortunate that as we're out there navigating and learning what this all means and how it's going to go and who's going to spend what dollars and which neighborhood's going to get what provider, I've always felt confident that I have a team of people that I can resource to be a better resource to my community. And again, that's because of this group and because of our opportunity to work with Blandon. Barb, I'll pass it to you.
I was trying to lean over and show you our t-shirts from the fair, Leicester County Broadband Community. We were at the county fair. We had a booth. We had several hundred people stop by. We had to run out and tell them we weren't selling anything. And then we took them to the map. They showed us where they were. We explained the whole situation and what some of the holdups are. And it was really positive experience. We're actually thinking about having a second one once we do some more mapping with MetroNet, probably late October, early November. That was a really good discussion. And I talked with Nancy, what was it? My gosh, a couple weeks ago now already, about we have townships that are interested in really drilling down and figuring out how to maybe just cover certain neighborhoods as opposed to the whole township. So we're in the wait and see mode because so much of it is locked up with LTD, but we're planning under the hood for what we can do once we can move ahead. So all good.
I'm shaking my head, Barbara, because I used to laugh at Nancy and she'd say to us, seriously, we have to solve this one township at a time?
Yeah,
and now are you telling me we're solving it one neighborhood at a time inside township?
Well, you're looking at lake areas. That's part of the problem.
Sure.
Our southern part is lakes. Yep.
Sure. So who haven't we heard from yet? Let's see. I
think it looks like we've heard from all of our BBCs.
All of our guests. Okay. Good. Well, thanks for that. And Katie, especially, I was gratified to hear that you find touch base with this group continues to be a resource and encouraging. So that's great. Well, let's go on then to the, we thought that next after our check-in, and I think our team will check in as we go through about now in this next agenda thing about Blandon news. And we're going to spend some, just update you on some of the stuff that we're going, that we're involved with in our work here. And the first is our Accelerate program. We wanted to talk just a little bit about our new cohort. Bill, would you do that for us?
Sure. Accelerate is a program that emerged kind of out of the pandemic, and we wanted to help communities get better prepared for broadband. And I've been doing that over the years in kind of a more random fashion with communities kind of at their pace and as they have desires to move forward. We wanted to try a more systematic approach. And so we launched what we call our Accelerate program. And one part of that is just to, in an intense way, to move communities from a lack of preparedness to being better prepared. And we utilize the whole realm of content that we've developed in our webinars. If you've looked on the Blandon site, you can find webinars on just about any community broadband topic, and especially kind of the whole process from surveys and team building and engineering and finance, working with existing providers and so on. And so we've developed a 14-week program where we meet every Friday morning. People watch, community teams of up to at least 8 people are required. And we watch during the week, watch a video of a webinar. And then on Friday morning, we meet for 2 hours from 9 to 11. And that first hour is generally usually a guest speaker on that same topic, on that week's theme. And then we have our news and information and sharing between communities. And that's the first hour. The second hour is then the community has their own steering team meeting and plans out the activities for the next week, whether that's on provider interviews or surveys or looking at maps. And through that 14-week process, they watch 10 videos, and then a couple weeks they just kind of try and catch up and do all the work that's required for broadband planning. And then the final 2 weeks is I facilitate individual community planning sessions, 2 of those for the communities. And then the final week is the communities present their plans to the other peers in the other communities. And then I often go, and just like yourselves, it's, you get prepared, you do the work, you reach out to providers, and the conversation starts. And the communities are well prepared. They've got a real consensus on their team about what it is that they want to accomplish, whether that's all fiber or some kind of wireless fiber hybrid, or the timing that it's all or nothing, or it's incremental is okay. They've had those kind of conversations. And so they're really well prepared then to meet with those providers. And now with the dollars that are available, both the ARP dollars and other dollars coming online, 2 of our 4 communities, actually 3 were affected, but applied for the DEED Small Cities grants. And so they came home with a total of $8 million between the 2 applications. Pine, Kennebec, and Aiken counties, and then the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe were our 4 original communities. And so both Aiken and Pine were able to get, I think it was 3+ and then $4 million+ dollars for their projects, and which affected the Mille Lacs Band as well, some of their territory. So it was really positive. And so we're looking for a total of 4 communities. We think 4 is a good number. We have 2 in hand right now that are committed. We're looking to start in November. For your teams, it never hurts to have these conversations, but certainly you guys have been doing the work that we do through Accelerate over the, you've already done lots of that. At some point you have to say, okay, now let's resurvey what's left. Let's talk to providers and refresh that cycle. And if you're interested, you're sure welcome to get your team together and say, let's get it going. I think for our, somebody like Carter, who's kind of new on board and looking to meet people and get organized, that would be a way to make things happen, to get, again, get that consensus, get your own knowledge up to a higher level. As I know, expect that, broadband is not, oh, this is a simple thing. There's a lot of things that go on there. So that would also help Carter bring his knowledge up to speed. But, so that'd be, it's a real opportunity. So if you're interested, let me know. And I'd be happy to, if you have team members that you'd want to see, hey, let's see if there's interest here. Plow ahead with it, and we could do a webinar to let you know more. I'm sure with your pretty good level of sophistication, we can always bend this program to fit your individual needs. We're not, us, we're not really dogmatic that, okay, check that box in the particular way we say. We're flexible to meet the community needs. So we could talk about that as well.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, thanks, Bill, on the flexibility part is including what the unit of geography is or impact how you think about your community. Recognize that that's real patchwork. The more, it's getting more uneven, right, with between haves and have nots. So county, township, groups of townships, I don't know about neighborhood, but we're open to different ways to think about what that area of need is and how you, so even just in the talking to other peers about it, we just wanted you to be aware that we're in the field recruiting and including through, and I'm going to move on to our next Blanda News topic now, which is the regional meetings that we've been holding. And we've been using those regional meetings, the connection there in part to make people aware of and recruit for potential partners in the Accelerate program Bill talked about. So it's fall, and fall in Minnesota, you guys know, is our broadband conference season, and we are coming up to our meeting. And as you know, we're gonna have a virtual gathering again here in October, the 12th, 13th, and 14th. And Mary, maybe sometime in the meeting, if you could share again into the chat the registration for that. But in the lead up to that, our conference team has been working with colleagues across the state, the RDCs and the MIFs, to hold a regional, a series of regional broadband convenings to try to shine a light on what's, there's a lot of things in common and a lot of things that are unique in our regions in terms of access and technologies and partners and who's available, what kind of provider environment you're in and all that. And so to try to dig a little deeper and engage, especially the township supervisors and county commissioners and EDA folks in your communities, have these regional meetings. And last week, those began. We had 3 last week on the 16th, 3 on the same afternoon. And Ann and I and Diane Weber and Mary and others were in a lot of meetings that day, and Carter participated as a rapporteur for the West Central Initiative Foundation meeting. They had a little bit of a unique, their approach was they kind of piggybacked on a meeting of the board of directors of the West Central Initiative Foundation. But I'm wondering, Carter, would you want to share out any impressions, or what did you think of that whole deal? And what did you come away with from that?
Well, I thought it was extremely helpful to have that event. What I found most interesting was what Todd had shared in regards to wireless point to multi-point infrastructure placed up on top of towers. I think that that's interesting to combat a lot of topographical challenges in areas like ours, for instance, and I think it would be interesting to connect with him and further flush that out. As far as that whole process was concerned, I think it's going to be incredible when everyone gets together at those state broadband events, and they can share their regional differences, which might obviously identify and solve and shed light on difficult areas that everyone's facing in their different regional jurisdictions. So I thought the whole process has been phenomenal.
Wow, I'm really glad to hear that, Carter. I'm just, thanks for that feedback. I'm just pulling up myself the page here to share. So on the next meeting, it looks like it's on the 22nd in the Arrowhead region. And I've been involved in the planning of that one a little more than some of the others, because as you guys know, we've been working in the Arrowhead quite intensively. We've had a bunch of different cohorts there, and I know they've got over 100 people signed up already for that meeting on the 22nd, and a whole raft of presenters, lots of projects that will be shared. And Mayor Larson is going to welcome us, so I know that'll be a good meeting. And then on the 23rd, Central 7W is hosting their meeting from 10:30 to noon. That's going to be a virtual meeting. And then the 29th on the Northwest, the HRDC up there is hosting from 9:30 to 11. And on the 30th, North Central Region 5 is meeting in the evening. So all those details you can find on that link that Mary just popped in there. Thanks a lot for that, Mary. And encourage you to encourage others to attend. It's a good way to start that conversation, keep it going regionally. And then for the state conference, we'd love to see you guys there. And there'll be Ann and Mary and Bill and I and others have been planning what we hope will be a super interactive and fun day with a lot of fast-paced content and an opportunity to kind of hear what's going on. And then, as Carter said, each day we're going to be having a conversation about what we heard from the regions and how does that compare and contrast, and what does that roll up to sort of for the so what, now what for the state. So it's a busy time here for us. It's fun to have this drink of fresh water with you in conversation today, because this is the this feels like our team and something that's easy to fun to learn and get inspired from you today. On the feasibility study grants, that's kind of next. Mary, is that something that you could do a quick update on, our feasibility study grants?
Yeah, you know, I know that a lot of you already know what the Robust Network Feasibility Fund is. You know, just grants to determine the feasibility of broadband networks in your region. So that program is always open. We do still have some money for 2021, and we will for 2022 also. We're asking for, I think we have a due date for grant applications of November 2nd. So that's always available if it's needed. It's up to $25,000. We have seen some, I know Nancy's submitted many of these for much less, just to cover those neighborhoods or partial townships, that sort of thing. But yeah, we've also funded community survey type activities through that and that kind of thing. So
thanks, Mary. So let's,
there. And you know, and was there anything else you wanted to say about feasibility study, or also have one other little bit of news to add?
No, please go for it.
Okay, and this is something I meant to put in that email I sent you last week, I think, but I forgot. So one other thing that we're working, or that I'm going to be working on, you know, post-conference, probably for a good solid 6 to 8 weeks, is working on our assessment, our bi-yearly assessment. It's a big writing project, and a lot of it is just kind of a summary from each of your each BBC, you know, just so one thing I could really use from you all are photos, since we don't really have any photos from the last 2 years. So if you had any great photos of any of your projects that you wanted to share, if you could send them my way, I'd really appreciate it. We'd like to put a lot of color in those reports so that people can, to keep people engaged. So that would be really helpful. And, you know, and I've been recording these meetings and writing down little notes of when people say cool things. So I already have 1 or 2 quotes in mind for that report from today. So good to hear from you.
Well, that's a fun response to have to send photos. It's not like something more onerous than that. So maybe that'll be a fun homework assignment. Any questions?
Testimonials work too. Testimonials work too. So thank you.
Well, we do have some great ones from our Tech Pack distribution project from our how we partnered our CARES, some of our CARES funding. So we will definitely check in with Erin at the Viking Library System, and she just got another one that she briefly shared with me. Just the hotspots had a recall, so she's had the opportunity to reconnect with people now 6-9 months after those tech packs were distributed, and has gotten a couple other ones. So there might be some more to share too. So they're really heartwarming. I'll just say that right now.
Super. Any questions to Blandon team about Blandon News before we move on?
I had a question about the feasibility study. So if that was an option that would want to be entertained, you had mentioned that it's possible to hone in on a specific, maybe neighborhood or location, point of interest. Is that something when you receive those grants, do you already have an engineering firm in mind or a consulting group in mind, or would it be on the initiative of the applicant to identify who would be conducting those surveys?
That'd be up to you guys to find the consultant that you wanted to hire. We have a list of folks that it's a list. It's not a recommended list, but we know it's, people who do the feasibility studies.
Got it.
But
Thank
Carter,
you.
having that partner identified is not a condition of the grant. We've made grants to communities who then use an RFP to find a partner. So that's not a sequential thing that you have to have that figured out first.
Got it. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions from anybody about Blandon News? Okay. All right. So in thinking about the opportunity to be in a Zoom room together today, and what we could, what could we really lean into and learn from another? Of course, the ARPA stuff came up, and we already heard from Amy this morning about some movement in her region about trying to figure that out. But that's kind of what we wanted to put out on the table here for a little informal roundtable discussion is, how are you planning for ARPA and other infrastructure funds in your region? What's going on in your region with ARPA funds? So let's just take a little time to kind of share from one another, and just informally, anybody who'd like to begin.
I can kick it off if you'd like, since I kind of started talking about it. But so at the county, we've identified 4 broader areas, which are aligned kind of with the categories of funding within ARPA. One that it was already mentioned, broadband. So we've dedicated about $2.8 million of ours to support broadband and other technology efforts. In partnership with our providers is kind of how we're structuring it. And, so they're looking at where they can at least initially partner with border to border and how we can be matched within that, and then kind of building out from there on that piece. So that's the one we've had the most discussion and conversation. And then we're also outreaching, and I know I've said this before, but we have 62 townships. And so we're continuing that outreach to them. And then seeing, how that can fit in, like I mentioned earlier, do they already have some wireless that we could maybe build upon, or is it planned to have some fiber extensions? Certainly RDOF comes into play. So lots of things happening, just planning for that. The other 3 areas, just to kind of go beyond broadband, we're looking at also other infrastructure. So predominantly some highway projects that got cut last year because of just how funds were flowing. So we might backfill some of those. And then workforce and business resiliency. And we're using some of our BBC grant dollars we're in the midst of a pilot program I'm seeing if that's on the agenda coming up, but a business resiliency assessment, and then a matching kind of make it happen grant that we're doing with 10 organizations across the county. So we're just making the consultant connections here this week and advancing that. So the idea is that's a pilot that we would hopefully use our ARP money to do a larger scale program beyond technology, other areas of support for stronger resilience of our business community, and then kind of honing out what workforce supports and workforce development efforts might come forward. Also looking at housing as another probably large area of support, and getting new construction and rehabilitation efforts in that area. And then the fourth, community resilience and mental health supports, and again, kind of that recovery area there. One project we've moved forward is having a social worker embedded within the county jail, and we're hiring for that position right now. So that'll be at least a 4-year position funded with ARP, and then through that we'll be assessing impact and value and results from that position. And so it's great to have that longer runway to show, to build up an effort and then be able to show progress in it or not for that piece. So those are our big areas, and then certainly monitoring the federal infrastructure package and what that might mean, maybe with some of I heard a ruling from the House on some updates this morning anyway, that hopefully maybe that'll help things move forward without some of those additions that the House was looking to make to that bill. So continuing to monitor that, and we'll be working to leverage that throughout the county as we're able, and as that comes forward. So that's what we're doing. Take any questions on the broader perspective.
Yeah, that's a lot. So who has questions for Amy? I have one while you guys are thinking. Amy, you said 2.4 million. Was that the number that your county board?
2.8.
2.8. Wow.
Yep.
So compared to what my dad would always say. So is that what you'd hoped for? Did you ask for more? What was the total amount?
Yeah, so our total allocation is 11.4, and so it's about 25% of it. And it was just as a starting point to help with our conversations with our providers, especially, our first step will be to try to leverage border to border applications to fill out some more areas, as we, if we can have a higher match, they'll do a bigger area. So we can keep, doing more. So that was kind of an ask and agreed upon number. It can be flexible as we, maybe, maybe the workforce and business category has less demand. We haven't really put numbers to the other areas for a project, the bigger areas, but the broadband one was given the 25% allocation. So that's the biggest bucket right now, and it could be more if need and opportunity is there.
Wow. Did the county look to you and your team for that recommendation, Amy? How hard was that to come up with that? Or did you kind of pull it out of a hat, or was it based on something?
Yeah, we'd had some preliminary conversations with the two main providers, RVIG and Park Region Auditel Telecom, on where they had some projects that weren't funded through border to border last year that were easy ones. They've already had the engineering done. They were going to be, I don't want to say easy, but logical to move forward in the next round of funding. And then we kind of built upon that to see how much more could we do, and what more could they do, like also a capacity side, and kind of backed into it in a really rough formula. And then the quarter, 25% just kind of made sense. And then we're working with the townships where those projects have been identified, particularly doing outreach with them and getting some commitments to have township dollars being to put forward projects as well.
Super. Thanks so much for starting us off. I'm sure it's super interesting for others to hear, and we'll compare now. So who wants to go next and talk about what ARPA looks like in your region?
I can.
Oh,
go ahead. Hey, Nancy.
all right, thanks. So as far as broadband goes, the county is looking at hometown fiber to come in and do a feasibility for the entire county. I hadn't been part of those conversations, so I got to catch up and learn what that really means. It seems that they put in the infrastructure, and then other companies like Mid-Continent, CenturyLink, whoever it is, can use those lines. And you know, and then the residents or the businesses can use whichever company is on those lines. Katie learned some things about that. I think that maybe she wants to talk about. Well, there was some concern that from Mid-Continent that by doing that, if something goes wrong with the lines, then people are blaming Mid-Continent. You know, there are just a lot of reasons that they might not be interested. We had a county-wide meeting in August with all the townships, all the cities, and good conversation. Of course, a lot of the townships had broadband on their minds and the use of ARP funding. Fish Lake, I felt kind of bad for them. They have fiber to the home, you know, and they're paying down their bonds now, and then they can't use their ARP funding for that. So they couldn't come up with a project. They just didn't have projects unless they build onto their town hall so that they can have a larger space for more people to gather. But that wasn't really something they were looking for, you know, so there's some issues that way. Other programs, I can only really talk about some of the things we're looking at as far as economic development. I just got off the phone this morning with Lakes and Pines, who does a lot of housing projects. They're our Community Action Council. And they're working on some things with Pine County, doing something similar to a small cities grant, but without Davis-Bacon and all the concerns, and only going out to homes and businesses outside of the cities. So something to think about there. We also talked about, you know, using them for rehab projects, housing rehab. I'm just struggling a little bit to find some good information and data on it, and really finding out what is the gap, what's the problems that we need to solve. So I'm still really in a research mode for that. The other thing that we're looking at doing is working with Pine Technical College. Again, they worked with Pine County, and they provided fast track training certificates for individuals, primarily in the manufacturing and healthcare fields, getting unemployed and underemployed to work faster, which we need lots more employees. And, you know, this would provide the training for them. A lot of the cities seem to be using their funds for water extension. We're seeing a lot of that, especially to get under I-35. Otherwise, I'm a little bit out of the loop, but countywide, I really need to. Oh, and then tourism, and maybe Katie can talk about that.
Yeah, well, when we had our, so like Nancy said, we'd already been sort of talking to some of our the RDOF award winners, if you will, Mid-Continent being one, the other was Windstream. And what we've learned from the county perspective, then we had this big meeting where everybody from, you know, townships, mayors, police, sheriff, school districts, there was a lot of heads in the room. And the idea was, let's just sort of brainstorm and talk about what each of these individual entities might need or want. And if we talk about it out loud, maybe there's some crossover, maybe there's some higher level things that we can pool those funds. And the frustrating thing was that broadband was on everybody's lips, but nobody had allocated any money to it. And we are, I mean, that in my mind continues to be the single most important countywide thing that we need. But when you're given this magic wand and suddenly you can get the water meters that you don't have budget for or whatever else, that's really what we kept hearing, is that we've got this really important thing, but instead we're gonna take care of these smaller municipality issues that we've had for a long time. Meanwhile, Nancy and I are like, come on, broadband. So that was frustrating. And at the same time, you know, these ARP dollars are coming down. Half of our community, I'll just speak about the Chisago Lakes, but then largely the Chisago Lakes area is very largely covered by RDOF grant winners, one of whom we have a tremendous amount of confidence in, the other we don't. So then you have these ARP dollars that come in that I believe don't work when you've got RDOF dollars already. So we're trying to do this dance and play this juggle. Meanwhile, everybody's looking to spend money on water. So we'll see how that plays out. The thing that was told to us about Hometown Fiber, and I thought it was an interesting approach. They talked about they build the road. So like MnDOT, right? They build a highway, and the highway isn't just for FedEx. It's not just for UPS. FedEx and UPS can both drive on the same road. And that's what Hometown Fiber is proposing, is that they build the road, and then internet providers can come in. And the reservations that I heard about that were what Nancy said, and that was that there's no guarantee about it. So Midco has a particular guarantee that they give to all their customers. If service goes down within 3 hours, they'll be back up, and they can't make that same guarantee. They want to own their own road, and I think part of that has to do with their own control over what the products that they're able to provide. Also, there's a safety issue. They're not able to control who gets on and off of the road. And then the other thing is that then you need a municipal resource. You have to have some place for the calls to come into if a line gets cut or whatever, and they can't provide that. So it was an interesting counter to this, what Hometown Fiber is offering. Still very much feel like we're in the position of just trying to gather as much information as we can, and hopefully then be able to turn around and offer this menu of options to people in our community and in our county and beyond. But again, it's hard when nobody is really looking. Like you said, Amy, you prioritized 25% of those dollars were going to broadband. That has not been done in Chisago County. The need is there, the dollars allocated or not.
So Amy or Katie, I would suggest you look at two different places around open access networks.
Okay.
One is in the Front Range of the Wasatch Mountains in Utah.
What do we call it? Open what?
It's open access. And so Mid-Continent's arguments are the same ones that incumbent providers use all the time. I mean, why would they want somebody to be able to come in and have 10 different internet providers offering service there, compared to now they have themselves and Frontier, right? Which means themselves.
Yep.
And so they love that. So heavily discount their issues. They might not go on the network, but they might as well. So we'll see about that. But so it's called Utopia, is the network in Utah. And they now have about 40 cities on this network. And it started off as like a joint powers group, and it's evolved. They had issues early on when they started to grow and so on. They had serious issues, but they made it through that. And now it's incredibly successful. And then there's another Ammon, Idaho, AMMON. And that's a municipal network that the city owns and operates. And people essentially agree to pay the cost of their own installation, $3,500. They can either pay it up front, or they can pay it over 10 years with a bond, through city bonding. And so when they get 50% of a neighborhood to say we want it, the city bonds for it and then builds it. And so they build the backbone throughout the community, but they only hook up the people who are willing to pay. And so then, if a new property owner comes in, wants to join, they have to pay that $3,500. But in Ammon, so they pay, if you finance it through the city, you pay your capital charge, which is, for the network, which is about $20 a month, I think. And then they also pay a maintenance fee, which is about $15 a month. And then you pay a service provider separately. And now it's $10 for a gig symmetrical service from the internet providers. And so if you add those three things, you're at about $50 a month for a gigabit connection. They have people offer free service. So if you want only a 50 meg connection, it's free. So you're paying the fixed charges, right, for the construction and the maintenance, but then the ISP just gives away, I think it's a 50 meg connection or something. I think it's just to get them on their lines, and people say, well, what the heck, for $10 more, I can have a gig. So then they do that. But that's a pretty competitive marketplace. And Ammon is kind of a suburban community, maybe in some ways not much different than your communities, if you add up your small towns.
I will look at it. One of the things that you guys had sort of instilled in me from the get-go on this is one of the things that we really want is choice. We want our community to have options. We don't want a monopoly where, and we've already begun to see that with Mid-Continent too, just some stuff that's, they'll run the cable, but if it's going to cost a lot of money to go up your driveway or, whatever. And I feel like the more opportunity we can give, it helps keep these providers honest too, and really truly providing what's best.
Yeah, thanks, Bill, for sharing that about the Utopia example. And I want to just share with the group. So years and years ago, near the beginning of Blandon's work in broadband, I got introduced to this open access network concept. And at the time, the model community that I was introduced to was in Sweden, Västerås, Sweden. It's a small suburb outside of Stockholm. And I, just given what I'm looking for, which is opportunity, access, and community, engagement and ownership, I kind of felt like open access network had me at hello. I mean, I just love, the way you put it, Katie, right? One road, why do we need a road for FedEx and a road for UPS? It just, that layering of investments for the infrastructure. So I've always just conceptually loved this idea of open access network. But the concern is, just as you said, that other providers don't like to share the infrastructure because they can't guarantee the quality of the network. But one thing I wanted to add that appealed to me especially, that Bill didn't mention yet, was that when you have that open access network, you have a landing page that the whole community shares. And so you're able to create, you can create like a connection to a sort of a community intranet. So you can have your local newspaper, all of your takeout, your restaurant, everything there. So people you can kind of create an online community that is very community centric, that you don't have when you have, your landing pages, your for-profit or your other community provider. It's the community network itself is where people come to. And it creates a thicker kind of fabric of connectivity in and amongst community members. Did I get that right, Bill? Do you want to correct anything I said wrong? Or?
Well, I just don't think those two things are necessarily related anymore. I mean, that the city could, just through a web page, a landing page where it doesn't matter where it's hosted, that kind of activity can take place, whether it's not dependent on the network. But what it does, one of the things that the RS Fiber Cooperative one talked about was the ability that if you're on network, then you could essentially get people who don't want to pay for internet service. You could still give them connection to a network that doesn't hit the internet, because if you're only on the network, there's very little cost or if you're only on the local network, there's very little cost to sending data around that network. But once you go off, where you're off to AT&T Chicago or something, then you have costs. So, but I think that was part of the vision of RS Fiber. One of Mark Erickson's visions was to have this intranet community where all the hospital and the schools and everyone could have such a free video conferencing between entities. But I think the technologies like Zoom and Teams and much of that has come to make all these things possible without that more community.
Without the intranet, without relying on the intranet. Yeah.
Anne, do you have anything on that?
I'm curious what that looks like for, free like hotspot areas? Do you have certain parts of the grid where you're just say, if you're within this space, you can use whatever you want?
So many communities would then hook, the amount used generally with wireless networks, free Wi-Fi is relatively small. And so that cities do say, okay, we're gonna have free internet outside essentially, but there'd be no guarantee of service, right? So if your wireless doesn't hit your house very good, or you have a stick-a house, city's not gonna come out and fix things for you. But as a free service, we see that those kind of networks happening on those open access networks.
I guess I just think about it as far as universal, like what you don't want to do is create another situation where you've got the haves and the have-nots. You've got the people that can pay to be a part of this program, and then you certainly are going to have people that can't. And I guess I'm thinking about it like TV. Like if you don't have cable TV, everybody gets regular channels, right? But if you don't pay for the cable or for whatever else, then you're missing out. But essentially, your basic needs are still handled. You can still get.
So you could, like in
Probably just
Chattanooga, that's more of a municipal network. They're kind of a famous one. And so they, like when the pandemic hit, they just gave everyone a fiber connection. All the kids free and reduced lunch, they just gave them that. And so that was one thing that they controlled, but that's a municipal network. So an open access network could be owned by anyone, right? Owned and operated by. So Hometown Fiber, and I don't know what their model is. I'll be interesting to see what happens, what comes out of Chisago Lakes with them. But so Hometown Fiber could own an open access network, and they would operate it. The city, the county may decide to finance it on their behalf. And then they would the Hometown Fiber could make the lease payments essentially equal to the bonds for this network. And then that would be the entity that would operate it, interact with all those last mile ISPs, right? The people are delivering the service over the top of the network. So and I think Utopia, I don't know if they're a joint powers board or if they're a nonprofit. I'm not even sure right now what their legal entity is. But so somebody owns it and operates that big network. Like in Ammon, Idaho, if you're my ISP and your service was out this morning and I said, I'm sick of you, I'm switching, I can hook up my whole phone hotspot or something, get online and switch providers. That just by clicking on boxes, which one do you want? And boom, it automatically switches you from one provider to the other one. So that's how easy that can be. Of course, if the fiber is cut, then everyone's going to be out. Whether that's in a main line to the community or whether that's within a neighborhood or so on. But all those things, that's the same thing with any thing. And if there's only one provider in the right of way digging and doing that, then you're less likely to have those fiber cuts anyways. Because I'm sure we have Midco cutting Frontiers lines once in a while, vice versa. So,
Bill, do you have a sense that is that Ammon, Idaho and the Utopia project, are there other open access networks in America, or are those just the ones that we're aware of? What do you think?
Those are the big ones. But they're, so I'd have to look again. I haven't looked recently.
Weren't they in Litchfield?
This is, and now I'm going to rail. So here you go. If you look at Hometown Fiber, this is why I'm so confused. Litchfield has a municipal network connecting city facilities, but there is no retail sales on that network. I called Litchfield. So that's why I get confused with Hometown Fiber. And that's why I'm hoping that they get some projects, so then we can see how it works. But I don't understand,
Bill, Katie and I are meeting with them next Monday. Would you like to join us?
I was gonna say that. No.
No, see, when I ask questions, they're just like, when providers don't like it when anyone asks questions about them, whether they're this consultant or a thing. So they've already called Blandon and yelled about me. So,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
so
well,
here's what I know about Hometown Fiber is that this Kyle
Yeah.
guy, who's the CEO, is highly regarded by his customers, by his references. So that's all I know is that, he's an excellent technical person. And so, but some of the things they have on their St. Louis Park is on their reference list too, I think, or Hopkins, and they don't have a municipal network either. They do have fiber that goes in and around. And I think like in St. Louis Park, some of that fiber now is being used by US Internet as a provider, but that fiber was put in long ago to support their boondoggle solar powered wireless network that they put in 10, 15 years ago. But it just shows you the fiber always has value. If you put it in the ground, if you're not using it today, it will still be there next year.
Well, Bill, if you think of anything that you think would be helpful for us to bring to that meeting, I'd really appreciate it. You are an expert in this, and it'd be nice to know if you had anything that we should be going in there looking for.
And part of it all is they may say, hey, we can do this any number of ways, which means they're not really pushing this way or how do you do this? If they say, well, it depends, right? Then that's a valid statement that, okay, we can have it, the county could own this, or you could, Hometown Fiber could own it and you can pay us to operate it, or there's any number of models that could work. And I've not been in on their conversations with folks, but people always seem confused at the end of them. That's been and maybe they'll come up with a good way to explain it or what the models are for Chisago County. I'm very interested to hear about them, but I'd rather hear it from you guys.
Yep. Well, we'll be, like we say, we'll be talking to them soon. We'll let you know.
Oh,
Yep.
good. Well, this has been super interesting. All a riff on the question about ARPA funding and how it's being used. Barbara, before we move on to our next topic, do you have anything you wanted to add or would like to ask or share about what's going on in Lee Sueur County around ARPA funding?
Yep. We have $2.5 million set aside of 5.6 million for broadband fiber, another $1 million potentially from the townships. Some of the townships are not quite sure where they're at, and some of those where we're not sure that have the most need, but the county requirement is going to be township have to put their ARPA money up or they don't get the county dollars. We had our first township and all elected official meeting in June, and we're waiting to get maps back. So Jaguar, Metronet they have a legacy fiber everywhere here. We're waiting to map out the whole county. We've met with BevCom to see where they want to expand to. So, and I'm urging them to get their maps and their budgets in before the ARPA dollars go to hog farmers, which is where some of it went last time. So we're out there railing on to get maps and costs. And as I said earlier, we've got some interesting areas around lakes that are more motivated in other parts of the township. If we could do some smaller areas too, we'll look at that. So, yep, all under discussion.
Just one quick point. There's a new book out. It's called by a guy named Christopher Ali, and it's all about ag and farmers and the need for farmers. Bernie, what's that name?
Farm Fresh Fiber.
Farm Fresh
and
Fiber.
It's got a subtitle, something like National Broadband Plan or something. And cool news flash that Christopher Ali's agreed to keynote our conference. So you come on day 2, we're going to hear from him. He's going to talk about he's got some policy recommendations about why we are in this rural urban divide, what's gone wrong with America's rural broadband policy and what to do about it.
I think it's Farm Fresh Broadband.
Yeah. Good. Very interesting. And I'm wondering about with the county with 66 townships, how you effectively engage a conversation with them and how you get that level of detail and that's a lot of work to have and a lot of conversations to be having.
Well, and we have 14, and this time around, it's a much more complicated application process, unfortunately. We have 3 that have yet to complete the process, and they are actually ones who are really motivated and want to do it, but it's a much more complex process than last time. So I'm thankful to only be hounding three still, but I can't imagine with all those, how you get all that done.
I'm curious, do you guys look to the League of Cities or the Association of Minnesota Counties for support, technical support about this? Are they, you know, who can you turn to for resources about figuring out county and township roles?
The township will, you can pay them for $30 to do the application with you, and they realize the townships need that level of support. For $30, they will do that application with you. So they are really stepping up on this, but getting the townships connected up and, you know, the communication things are really challenging, but the townships have really stepped up and will help them do the application.
Okay, good. Good, okay, well, in the, I wanted to suggest we have one more round of conversation here before we have to end our time together, and that is kind of, so in terms of our ongoing pandemic here, that we're still in what are we, the 4th now iteration of it, and we continue to kind of try to figure out how to live with it. What is going on in your community about using technology to cope with the pandemic, you know, in terms of schools and healthcare particularly, or community services? Anybody something to share with others about how your community is using technology as a way to cope with the pandemic?
The pandemic doesn't exist in Chisago Lakes, is how it looks around here. We have very little mitigation happening at our school level. We do not have a distance learning option available. Many of our businesses are interested in meeting in person, as am I, as are a lot of people. Masks are starting to show back up, but not really. When we think about technology, we do have, again, as a result of our Blandin dollars, we did purchase a number of hotspots. So should we need to go back to distance learning for schools, or if businesses do crack down and we are not going to be meeting in person any longer, we have those available to check out at our local library. But I mean that in a very sad way. I feel very often like my community is so over this pandemic to the point where they're just they really are done with it. They're not doing mitigation strategies. They're not meeting virtually. They're meeting in person. The kids are in person. The games everything's happening.
Wow. Meanwhile, we are approaching 6,000 deaths, I think, in the state. Our numbers are as high as they were last spring, and Itasca County, we're shooting up.
We are too. Our school, I mean, that we know that's the petri dish, right? And when we know that when you go out on spring break and the kids have a break from each other, or holiday break, that helps, and summer break helps. And now, you know, our school district started back up with no mask mandate, no distance mandate, nothing. They are as they were at the start of 2019. And we got a message from our superintendent the first week of school. I think they had 13 cases, one teacher. The second week it was up to 30 something. It's like, are we surprised? We're not, but it's.
And there's no tripwires about numbers or percentages that they would then go to plan A, or.
I think they just seem determined to react and not proact, is how it feels to me, at least from that particular entity.
We're seeing some of that here as well, but I wanted to share something I learned this weekend, which was really a surprise to me. I was telling Mary that we helped a friend move into, with disabilities, move into HUD housing in Belle Plaine, and found out from the program manager that there are people there paying more for internet and cable than they are paying for rent. And that's Mediacom running these towns. And I'm going to talk to Scott County about it and do some more looking at it. But that's something, and what she said is during the and they only had one case in the entire place. And it was someone who came in to assist someone with computer stuff where they got it. But they have really been locked down and the protocols are great. This facility, they've really been amazing. But she said people are really suffering because they're paying more for cable and internet than they are for rent during an epidemic. That gives you something to think about, huh? So in terms of the rest of the county, we're looking at building on what we started last time, and but it's hard getting accurate information about what's what. I mean, and we've had a lot of changes too. We've had our new public health nurse, Sue Rinda, our human services director, is retiring at the end of the year. So we've got a new county administrator. So in terms of getting some of that information, it's a bit more challenging. But we're working on building, and we're working on one of our Blandin projects we want to move ahead with is working with our community ed programs and using them as a way to expand information and expand information about training and support for people. And I will get you the name of the person at the manager at that program, so you can call her.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. She's also looking at how does she get an antenna on top of it. I mean, who thinks about antennas anymore? You still need antennas for television. Oh yeah, because of the cost of cable. Yeah.
I don't. That. Wow.
Has anybody seen any
Thank you.
telehealth or telemedicine applications in your healthcare providers or other health facilities that are using technology as a pandemic mitigation in any new ways?
I think they're all pretty well set up on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily because of my work. We were at the pediatrician this week and I asked her about that specifically. And she said they pretty much do everything in person right now, with the exception of mental health checks have become much more virtual. And she said it's good and bad. You know, it's sometimes you need to really be able to see somebody, have that body language and have an understanding of whether or not they're doing okay. But she said it's also been very insightful in that you have a glimpse into their environment. They have, sometimes these kids will, want to show things off, their pets or their rooms or whatever. And so there's goods and bads to it.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends is a therapist and with kids, and she shared that when she was 100% online, she had much better participation rates because now people are back to running and errands and getting people here and getting people there. It's much, she said that, so the use of the service is lower when face-to-face than it was on online because it was more accessible, but they've gone completely to face-to-face now.
We have a couple, I do have somebody who was a player in one of our, the St. Croix Regional Medical Center who attends a lot of our meetings, and we just have sort of been in touch. He's actually over in Polk County in Wisconsin. So it's been interesting to kind of hear some of the comparison between what's happening in Minnesota versus what's happening in Wisconsin. And then Barb, I also wanted to mention, we've really developed a partnership with our community ed, specifically the PCs for people, the computers that we got. We've created a number of labs throughout our communities that are accessible specifically to people that are 55 plus. And then we've used some of our grant dollars to pay for a consultant essentially to come in. We've got somebody who's setting up the labs, but this consultant is coming in and developing some curriculum that we're offering and deploying for free through our community ed programming. Basically like Computers 101. The idea in this all along, and actually this was a big passion point even when we applied to be a BBC community, was that we felt like there's so many people out there that are getting taken advantage of. Their safety is compromised because they don't have good skills about how to keep themselves safe online. So we are providing some classes specific. I mean, even some things like, how do you add an attachment to an email? That's a real problem for some people. They don't know how to do it, or how do I get on Zoom, or how do I FaceTime, or whatever it is. We have a contract with the local technology company, and he's helping develop curriculum, and then we'll do these trainings for people in our computer labs that are PC for people machines, and then paid for through our grant.
We're actually, it was very fun this last week. I took a desktop, a PC for people desktop and a Chromebook down to our county park. And our county park is full of seniors during the week, now using the free Wi-Fi that we paid for with the CARES Act dollars. And there's a room there that we're looking at doing exactly that. But Shannon Frost, who's one of our people here, is going over there to train the seasonal worker on using a computer for the first time. She never has. And then we're looking at using that room as exactly that kind of a point. While people are there, they can go in and get a class.
Well, and the nice thing about it too is because it now lives with community ed, we've got that sustainability piece built in. The curriculum is being built and paid for through our Blandon dollars, but now it's owned by our community. So if we go forward, we have a method to having people sign up. If eventually we have to charge people for it, then so be it. But for now, it's a free opportunity for people to just, and we've also made sure to be advertising it in places that are not just unique to that 55 plus. I'm the caretaker, I'm a 40-year-old caretaker of my 83-year-old dad. So it's being advertised to people like me so that I can help my dad get what he needs, knowing that, you know, there's a lot of caretakers out there that would love to hand over their loved one and say, could you teach them for a little bit?
Yep, cool.
The story I wanted to share from Grand Rapids in terms of, you know, like what do we bring forward into the post-pandemic or life with pandemic world from our experience coping was has to do with city council meetings and participation and all kinds of public meetings. So of course, during the pandemic, the city government and I sit on the Human Rights Commission, we met virtually. So we used a virtual platform and met. And then my experience on the commission was that it really did increase accessibility, of course, assuming again that you have a good internet connection, but assuming you do, that it really helped mothers with kids or, you know, parents or people that might have other barriers to participate virtually. Well, when the city opened up again for in-person gatherings and kind of stopped that protocol of a pandemic protocol, instead of carrying forward into our new future, this hybrid model where you can participate online for accessibility reasons as well as in person, they shut down all the virtual participation. And I've said that it's something to do with open meeting laws, you know, that you, but to me, I'm just myself kind of curious about what might be possible. It feels like a loss of accessibility and participation that we've gotten used to online participation people. And now again, they've said, no hybrid meetings. Or what experience have you guys had in that realm?
At our county, the commissioners, or in my case, the EDA members meet in person, but for others, the option of coming on through Zoom virtually is open. So that at least it kind of reduces the number of people in the room.
Yeah.
And it's been good for me when there's a county board meeting, I don't have to sit there for, 2 hours while I have a 2-minute presentation. So it's kind of nice as far as productivity as well.
Yeah.
Our meetings are still both. We just had a meeting in the boardroom with both in there, and they're still doing that with the county board meetings. So, but I can see it coming up as an issue. We've got some pretty contentious meetings with planning and zoning, and people complaining that they're on, but they can't get in and say something. I can see how it could become a problem because of some incident that came up. But because I heard in planning and zoning that there were a lot of people on a Zoom and people didn't feel like they had a voice.
Okay. Any other reflections or experiences about using technology to cope with the pandemic? Anybody? Okay, well, Mary, let's turn to you now as we wind up the meeting on closing out BBC. Any, there's a, on our agendas, strut your stuff and final reporting.
Well, I sent out an email last week covering most of that. I mean, I guess our team hadn't really even talked about strut your stuff. I suppose we should do one more of those probably sometime in November. We'll have to get those on the calendar, virtual strut your stuff meetings. But yeah, any questions? I also asked people to take a look at that project matrix and just make sure that everything's up to date, that we aren't missing any project plans or anything like that.
Okay, thanks, Mary. You guys all know where to reach her with any questions you should have. Well, as we say goodbye today, I'm going to invite everybody to share one thing that they're looking forward to this week. I have to think a minute before I answer that question. So who has something to share whether they're looking forward to this week? Go ahead, Nancy.
Our GPS 4593 Economic Development Group is having their annual meeting this Friday. And we're meeting up at the Hinckley Casino, and we have Ben Winchester presenting, and I've heard him before, and I just absolutely love his message. So I'm looking forward to that. And then maybe a little golf afterwards. We'll see.
Well, I'll go next. This is Bill. It's not this week, but it's the following week. We launch our next cohort of communities. We have 6 new Blandon broadband communities starting, and they're all across the state. And so virtual is kind of a positive, because if we thought about what's the geographic center, I guess it'd probably be Bemidji, because we go from Austin to Warroad to Big Stone and counties and Pine County. So we've got the whole state covered. So it's exciting to get going again. Of course, we thought, oh, let's, this will all be back to normal, but it's all back to Zoom again. So hopefully we'll get to set foot in those towns at some point in this process, but getting ready to launch virtually again.
Well, we're going camping this weekend at the county park and using the free Wi-Fi and fishing. Last time we went fishing there, I got the first biggest fish, and we will do some more fishing too.
What are you catching there, Barb?
Panfish, big ones though, really big ones.
Well, mine is less about work and more personal. We have been in the process of renovating our home since July. And this week next Monday we'll be about 98% done. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited to cook in my kitchen and stop eating out.
Yeah. Wow, that is exciting.
Yeah.
Well, so what I am looking forward to is hearing back from our colleagues about our board meeting. We had a board retreat this week. Board came together and met in person for the first time in over a year, I think. They had a 3-day retreat out at Sugar Lake Lodge. And I'm very excited to hear a report back from my colleagues who were there about the discussion, and because they were doing some heavy lifting around strategic planning. And with our new CEO, I'm anxious to hear and learn what they agreed to together about the future of Blandon Foundation. So I'm excited about that.
I'm excited to looking forward to the fall conference and having so many more things decided. And also Bob Mould of Husker Du is playing on Saturday, and I got free tickets. So
I'm kind of in a place right now because, you know, my dog woke me up at 4:30 and I'm really tired. So I'm looking forward to going to bed tonight. And I'm also looking forward to, you know, it's like one of those projects, getting all the kind of details, speakery information, you know, like this is what we need you to do to all the speakers for the conference. And it's all, everything's a little bit different. So I'm looking forward to getting those all out there into the world and being done with that project.
Check, check, check. Good,
Mhm.
good. All right. Well, Allie, I don't know if she's available to check in or not.
I'm here. Sorry, and thank you for allowing me to lurk and listen and work. I haven't had a chance to catch up with this cohort for a while, so I was eager just to hear about all the good work and check in. So thank you for allowing me to lurk. And what I am looking forward to, I would say I'm really looking forward to the regional gathering for Northeast Minnesota on Wednesday. I haven't been able to attend because of the board meeting last week, so I'm excited to be able to join in on one of those.
Great. Well, again, any other final instructions or for the good of the whole, anybody, anything? It's wonderful to be together in this room. Thank you so much. Have a great week, everybody. Stay close, stay well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.